This is the new normal, and I'm your host, Rafael McMaster. I'm here at the Resin Creative Labs in Hermosa Beach. This is our second episode, and today I'm going to talk about our organizational systems for our consciousness. Now, here's why I'm talking about this. Because we work with students and teenagers primarily, and we talk to them about the space inside their minds. There's so much anxiety, so much stress, and a huge part of that anxiety and stress comes from the fact that they have disorganized minds. Meaning the impressions, right? The impressions that come are just kind of all over the place. They maybe can control it a little bit, but not as much as they would like. And there's no organizational system, so it's a knot of information, a confluence, a hurricane, that it's difficult for them to deal with, subside with, control if they can. And so we're going to talk about our consciousness and how these impressions come in 5 different forms. But let's talk about impressions first, right? I'm not saying thoughts. Impressions can be a partial thought, a semi-thought, a smell, there's a lot of different things that an impression can be, which is why we use the word impression. It's the right word for this. So our consciousness has 5 different areas where our impressions come from. These different streams of impression. So we're going to talk about it today. And then we're going to do a quick 90-second visualization at the end that is going to help us get to a state where we feel physically present, spiritually aware, mentally focused, and emotionally calm, right? So we're going to do all of this in under 7 minutes. And so here we go. So now the 5 areas from where our impressions come from, right? The first is our senses. Everything we see and hear and smell and taste. Ooh, this feels good. I feel hot. It's warm today, right? Our impressions. First area, or our senses, the first area where these impressions come from. Okay, so that's one. Okay. The second is our brain and our thinking, right? And when we think about the brain of a human, we're talking about the most hyper-evolved, intergalactic genetic royalty that we are, with our frontal lobe and prefrontal cortex and all the capabilities in our pineal gland. The brain is this amazing, amazing machine. The challenge is, more so than the other 5 areas of impressions, people let this completely control their life instead of a balance of the 5. Okay, so we've got first is our senses. Our second, the thoughts that come from our mind, right? The third area from where our impressions come from is our emotions, our memories, our emotional body, right? And think about how these 3 occur different, but that they do occur. That I'm walking along, I'm like, oh, it's sunny. It smells good. Oh, what about this memory, right? And these impressions kind of flutter in, impression. And when I'm calm, I have less of these impressions, less thoughts, less of all this. And, seemingly in the afternoons every day now, when I'm typing and texting and email and thought and person and conversation and news and all this stuff, by the afternoon I'm having 300 impressions a minute, and that's what our kids are experiencing, right? This flood of impressions that gives them so much anxiety and makes them feel like they have no control over their mind. The reality is we've never stopped to create an organizational system for them to organize their impressions. So it's the same way of going onto a computer that has no organizational system, and you see files everywhere and applications are in random spots, and content randomly starts coming up, and things start showing up on the screen. That's what our minds are like, these unorganized areas for impressions that feel chaotic, right? So the point of today is to highlight an organizational system, kind of like going onto that computer, and let's start putting stuff in folders. Right? This act in and of itself isn't going to change everything in how you feel, but it's going to begin to lay the groundwork and foundation so that we can build tools on top of that. So this first act that we're doing today is helping you create an organizational system for your impressions that you feel comfortable with, and then we're going to do that visualization at the end. Okay, so we've got 3 so far. Our senses as they come in, our brain and our thinking, our emotional body, that's 3. The fourth is our ability to tap into the information field around us, this cloud of information around us, right? So tapping in through our pineal gland, through our intuition, through our senses, right? This is the field, this is the matrix, whatever you want. This actually scientifically is known as the Higgs field, right? This area of information around us. That's the fourth area where our impressions come from. You're hanging out, you have an emotion, you have a memory, and then it's like, oh, where'd that thought come from? It's almost like a little blip of intuition. We have these antennas in our pineal glands that act as transducers for those energy wavelengths, which we'll talk about in another episode. Okay, the fifth area of impressions comes from our heart as the seat of the soul. We can now prove scientifically that whatever it is that is our soul is giving information through our body, through our consciousness, it doesn't go to the brain and the rest of the body. It goes to the heart, which informs the rest of the body in immediacy through electromagnetism, right? So that means our heart is the seat of the instructions, not our brain. Okay, so now the heart of the seat of the soul, the challenge with that is that it's really quiet. The voice of my deepest wisdom is really quiet. And so when I have all these other impressions going, all these thoughts, emotions, it's so hard to hear it. Right? And that's the challenge, and that's why the importance of getting quiet and being able to reflect. Okay, now an analogy, so we can make sense of this. Let's take our iPhone as the analogy. The living at the level of the impressions of your senses is like what's on your screen. Your brain is like the hardware and the operating system of the phone, right? Your emotional body is like your stored memory and your pictures and your videos and your data. Your pineal gland is like connecting that to the internet, right? Connecting that to the Wi-Fi, how more powerful an organ our brain is when we connect it to the field of consciousness that's around us. All of a sudden we can tap into a totally different level of power, right? And then if you've got your screen as your senses, your brain operating system, your body, memories, photos, videos, your pineal gland, Wi-Fi, then the fifth, the seat of the soul as your heart for the small, still voice, that's like taking your phone and putting it down and being in this present moment. Being totally here. Now, the reason why this is so important, all of these teachings, is that 100 years ago, before even the television was invented, think about how much has changed in the last 100 years, life was much slower. And so the amount of information coming in to our computers that we would need to organize was far, far less. If we think about the amount of information that comes in the daily, 100 emails and texts and conversations and smells and and then we see anything that's on video or on a screen and it's got video and audio and moving graphics and breaking news and talking, the amount and density of the information is such that it creates this disorganized mind, which results in this tremendous amount of inner pressure and stress and anxiety and unease. It's an uneasy place for me up there if I don't have an organizational system or a way to work with or control my consciousness, which is what, in part, this Modcast, the new normal, is committing to help sharing with others the technologies that we've learned and that you will share with us about how to manage our consciousness, control our consciousness, work with our consciousness, work with ourselves, easy things. Okay, and we're going to do an easy thing here in a second, which will be about a 90-second visualization whose purpose is to get us into a state. You can always use this as a tool. It'll get us into a state where we are physically present, mentally focused, spiritually aware, and emotionally calm. Because at the end of the day, that's the state that I want to be operating from. All right? So, when I think about these teenagers on TikTok swiping, and the amount of information that is in that dense piece and how much they're taking in and their homework and their Zoom and their dog and their friends and their blah, 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 blah. It's just like having a computer with this stuff flying around like it's in a blender. And by just giving these students or ourselves or you this organizational system, it's like organizing your computer. Now we can begin to work on top of it. Now we can begin to work with it, okay? So now let's do this visualization together. So for this, you can just need to close your eyes. If you're driving, don't close your eyes. Do this some other time. All right, close your eyes. Now we're gonna inhale together. through our nose, down our chest, into our belly. And then exhale. We're going to do this just one more time. In through your nose. Feel how good it feels to breathe deep, down all the way into your belly button pressing down and out, expanding your ribs and your diaphragm, your lungs, and exhale. Okay, so continue to breathe like this. Okay. Now, while you're breathing like this, with your eyes closed, begin to tap into your senses, this first stream of our impressions, our senses. Hear my voice. Feel the headphones in your ears. Feel the seat or whatever underneath you or underneath your feet. Feel through your senses. Notice more. Continue to breathe deep. Notice more. Notice as much as you can. Breathe deep. Notice more. And now I want you to visualize a glowing rod going from the top of your heart up through the center of your brain up into the sky, right? So with your eyes closed, visualize this pole, right? This channel of light going from the top of your heart up through your throat, up through your pineal gland in the center of your brain, up into the sky. Visualize that. Visualize that. Feel that energy. Even if you're just imagining it, imagine it. Sense it. Sense how subtle that energy is. Now take the power of your brain and focus it inwards like you're focusing a camera lens so you can sharpen it on this beam going upwards. Sharpen it on that beam. And in this moment, realize that you are physically present, mentally focused, spiritually aware, and emotionally calm. And this is a state that we can always get to and operate from. So this has been the second episode of The New Normal. A lifetime more to come. So wherever you are, may the force be with you.